All right, it's a case made for the movies, a heist. Millions of dollars cash and jewels stolen. Mobsters with names like Skinny Dom, Vinny Gorgeous, and Tommy Shots. And it's playing out this week at a New York courthouse. The crime at the center of it all was the inspiration for the movie Goodfellas, the Lufthansa heist at JFK of 1978. Now, decades later, the alleged former mob boss, 80-year-old Vincent Asaro, is on trial. Gene Casares has been following this riveting testimony.
Fred, it's always said, oh, it's only in the movies. But prosecutors now in trial in New York are saying, no, this is real life.
It's going to be a good summer.
The blockbuster 1990 motion picture was Goodfellas, day-to-day life inside a New York mafia crew. A crew that hit a criminal jackpot.
In a daring pre-dawn raid at the Lufthansa cargo terminal at Kennedy Airport. The FBI says $2 million. Port Authority police say $4 million. The city cops say $5.
It was one of the largest heists in this country's history. The multi-million-dollar robbery of cash and jewels at Lufthansa's air cargo terminal at New York's JFK Airport in 1978. And now, for the first time, one of those fellas is being prosecuted in New York City for murder, racketeering, and robbery. 80-year-old defendant Vincent Asaro, an alleged captain in the Bonanno crime family, isn't portrayed in the movie because at the time his identity wasn't known. But prosecutors are portraying Asaro as the mastermind of the crime, with now deceased Jimmy the Gent Burke, portrayed in the movie by Robert De Niro.
Look at this genius.
Star witness for this prosecution 37 years later, the defendant's own cousin, Gaspare Valent, who wore a wire and recorded Asaro. A member of the crime family, too, who turned to help prosecutors after believing he didn't get enough of the loot. Valent was one of the masked gunmen who actually stormed into the airport warehouse and helped take millions out of the vault in cash and jewelry, and got away in this van. As Asaro could be seen in court saying liar, Valent testified he remembers packages of money that contained $125,000 in $100 bills, burlap sacks of gold chains, crates of watches, diamonds, emeralds, and stones. Total estimated value, $6 million, and none of it was ever found. Asaro's former defense attorney says he didn't do it.
Pretty much all the people that did it got murdered. So the fact that my client didn't get murdered would suggest that he didn't have anything to do with it.
Prosecutors also say defendant Asaro conspired and murdered by strangling with a dog chain Paul Katz in 1969, after it was believed he was cooperating with law enforcement. In June 2013, investigators found remnants of Katz's remains embedded in a basement floor, where prosecutors believe Asaro helped hide the body. 4 other defendants allegedly playing minor roles, including Asaro's son, have already made deals with the government. But the good fella prosecutors believe is the real deal is Asaro, and they hope to finally put him behind bars, at the same time bring justice to victims from generations of crimes never solved. Wiretap recordings are going to play a large role in this trial, and the current witness, the cousin of the defendant, started recording him in 2008. An excerpt from 2011 is where the defendant says on tape, you know, we didn't get our fair share of this. Jimmy the Gent Burke took it all. The witness is asked, what's he talking about? Well, he's talking about money and jewels from the Lufthansa heist in 1978. The trial is set to continue for the next 4 to 5 weeks. Gene Casares, CNN, New York.
All right, back now to the story we were discussing moments ago, this big trial, sort of Goodfellas on trial. Prosecutors say Vincent Asaro is a former mob boss who was involved in the Lufthansa heist back in 1978. Let's bring in our legal guys. Avery Friedman, a civil rights attorney and law professor in Cleveland. Good to see you.
Hi,
and Richard Herman, a New York criminal defense attorney and law professor, joining us from Las Vegas. Good to see you as well.
Hi, Fred.
And Richard, we're talking about a cousin who decided to, spill the beans because he didn't get enough of the loot. That's what we learned in Gene Casares' story. Is that going to be kind of, I guess, the real crux of the case, that testimony and the wiretaps?
Fred, it's not that the defendants are angry they didn't get their right share. That's what the problem here, Fred, is that it's a RICO prosecution, and the federal sentencing guidelines are so onerous in criminal RICO prosecutions that if you get convicted, you're basically looking at 20 years plus in prison. So they go to a guy like Valent, who was clearly one of the masterminds, and they say to him, if you ever want to see the light of day again, you've got to be a cooperating witness. You've got to plead guilty to a felony, then get up there, tell the jury all the big, bad, sensational things that happened. And now we got this guy over here, Asaro. We're going to make him the mastermind, and you have to tell us what we want to hear about him. And if you do a good job on him, we will then tell the judge you should be able to get out of prison and see the light of day again. That's what's going on here, Fred. This guy Valent was the top gun. He was the guy he was the mastermind. He saw everything. All the major players are out of the picture right now. And this 80-year-old Asaro, and I don't know what his past was, but let's not focus on Lufthansa for him. There may be other issues. One thing, though, Fred, the wiretaps, that's devastating evidence. The wiretaps are devastating.
Oh, and why now? I mean, we are talking about a very long time, and clearly it takes time to, gather evidence, etc. But, Richard, is this really the last straw, the last potential opportunity that prosecutors have to try to get to the bottom of this heist?
That's essentially it, Fred. It's been an unsolved crime for many, many years. A lot of frustration in the federal government. And, as time goes on, people's recollection of events start to change. People start to talk a little more as senility focuses in on them, and they want to talk about the old days and the good old days. And that's what happens. You get these guys that start to recant or start to reveal certain information, and the government is just jumping into it, and they're making a big spectacle out of this with Asaro and Lufthansa. I don't know if it's going to work in this one.
They called the government. It's the other way around. They called the government.
I don't think it's Lufthansa.
All right. Okay, so 5 seconds left on that, Richard, if possible, because I see your lips flapping. You've got stuff to say.
Right, but
we don't get to hear you now.
It's having nothing to do with Lufthansa. In order for him to get out of prison, he's got to tell them everything. So he makes a big story about Lufthansa, and that's why we're in this situation.
Got it. All right, we heard that. See? Richard Herman, Avery Freeman, thanks so much, gentlemen. Always love talking to you. Appreciate it.
Right.